Have you ever had a moment in your life when everything suddenly felt different, as if a veil had been lifted, and for the first time you could see yourself and the world around you with piercing clarity? It's a moment that defies logic, a moment where time seems to pause and something deep inside whispers, there's more to life than this. This is the beginning of what many call a spiritual awakening. And no, it's not some fairy tale of sudden bliss or eternal peace. In fact, it's often messy, confusing, and even painful, but it is real, and it changes everything. Spiritual awakening isn't a straight road. It's not a checklist or a linear path. It's more like a spiral, like the double helix of DNA wrapping back on itself, looping and evolving. Some people skip stages. Some revisit the same ones again and again. There's no one size fits all. And yet, despite the uniqueness of each person's journey, there are patterns that bind us together. There are five profound stages that almost every spiritual seeker encounters, no matter how different their past may seem. Today, we're going to explore these five stages in a clear, honest, and deeply reflective way. We'll dive into each phase, shining a light on what it truly feels like and helping you recognize which stage you may be experiencing right now. Stage one, the unconscious life. This is where the journey begins, though paradoxically, it doesn't feel like a beginning at all. In this stage, we are fully immersed in the ego. We live through it, breathe through it, react through it. Our identity is completely fused with our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs. We are quite simply an unconscious. It's a life where the mind runs on autopilot. Reactions replace responses. Emotions dominate reason. Our personal narratives, the stories we've told ourselves since childhood, go unquestioned. And because of this, we feel like victims of life rather than creators of it. Imagine living behind a fogged-up window. Everything you see is distorted, filtered through your wounds, your fears, and your past experiences. In this state, it's incredibly difficult to see others clearly, let alone understand them. Instead, we project our pain onto the world. We become defensive, angry, closed off. We interpret every challenge as an attack and every failure as a confirmation that we're not in control. Traumas, whether big or small, feel like proof that life is happening to us, not through us. We grasp for control, yet feel powerless. It's like being swept away in a current with no sense of direction, no awareness that we even have the choice to swim. This unconscious stage is not a flaw or failure. It's a necessary starting point. It is in many ways a cocoon, the place where transformation begins, even if we don't yet know it. And at some point, a subtle shift happens, a flicker of awareness. A quiet question arises, is there more than this? And just like that, the first crack appears in the shell. Stage two, ego death. This is the most destabilizing and yet the most liberating stage of awakening. Ego death is not just a poetic metaphor. It is the unraveling of everything you thought you were. You begin to question your identity. The labels you wore so confidently, gender, age, religion, nationality, beliefs, they start to feel hollow. The stories you told about yourself no longer make sense. The life you built starts to crumble, not necessarily in the external sense, but in the internal scaffolding that held your reality together. This phase can feel like losing your mind, and in some ways you are. But you're losing the false mind, the conditioned self, the mask, the illusion. During ego death, many experience a profound emptiness, a sense of floating. You may feel disconnected, ungrounded, even lost. But within this emptiness lies something sacred: space. Space for something new. Space for the real self to emerge. You start to witness your thoughts instead of being consumed by them. You notice emotions rising and falling without attaching to them. You begin to see that there is an observer within you, silent, calm, aware. This observer self was always there, but now for the first time it becomes visible. It's the part of you untouched by trauma, identity, or belief. And as you begin to trust this awareness more than the ego, you take your first real steps into freedom. Ego death is terrifying and beautiful. It's the dark night before the dawn. It's the sacred undoing of everything false so that the truth can finally breathe. Stage three, the search. Once the ego's grip loosens, a deep longing emerges. A yearning not for answers but for truth. This is the search. In this stage, we become seekers. We start asking big questions. Who am I really? Why am I here? What is the nature of reality? What is God? These questions don't come from the intellect. They rise from the soul, and they refuse to be silenced. We begin exploring spiritual traditions, sacred texts, ancient philosophies. We listen to teachers. We devour videos and podcasts. We journal, meditate, and reflect. The world becomes a vast mirror reflecting parts of ourselves we never knew existed. But the search is not about gathering information. It's about peeling back the layers. It's about unlearning as much as it is about learning. Often, the deeper we go, the more we realize how little we actually know. This stage can be exhilarating, like discovering a hidden map to the soul, but it can also be overwhelming. There are countless paths, countless teachings, and not all of them lead inward. Some are distractions, some are detours. The key is discernment, learning to trust your inner compass, to follow the paths that resonate with your heart, not just your curiosity. As the search continues, something begins to shift. The focus moves from outer knowledge to inner wisdom, and you start to realize the truth you're searching for has always been within you. You just needed to remember. As the ego dissolves and the illusion of identity begins to fade, a deeper hunger emerges, a longing not just to understand the self, but to understand life itself. And so begins the next profound phase of the awakening journey, the search. This stage is not just a mental or intellectual curiosity. It is far more than simply seeking answers. It's a yearning from the soul, a deep, heartfelt pull toward truth. A question echoes in the heart. Why am I here? What is the purpose of all this? Who or what is God? This isn't a casual interest. It's a blazing inner fire that won't be put out. It's as though something ancient inside begins to stir a part of you that remembers there is more to life than routines, roles, and responsibilities. The search becomes a sacred quest guided not by logic alone, but by an unshakable desire to reconnect with something greater. Many individuals at this stage turn inward. They begin exploring spiritual practices not out of obligation or trend, but from an authentic place of need. Meditation, prayer, contemplation, journaling, or even channeled writing may become daily rituals. These aren't done for show. They are windows into the soul, offering glimpses of peace and clarity in the midst of life's complexity. Books become more than just words on a page. They become portals. Spiritual teachings suddenly resonate in ways they never did before. A single paragraph might leave someone breathless, as if they've just remembered something they had long forgotten. Each insight lands not just in the mind, but in the heart. There's a lightness, a joy in feeling seen, understood by words that speak directly to the soul. In this stage, the seeker becomes a sponge for wisdom. There's an eagerness, even an urgency to absorb knowledge that aligns with this newfound awareness. Videos, teachings, lectures, and sacred texts all become stepping stones across the river of understanding. The individual begins piecing together a personal philosophy drawn from both ancient traditions and direct experience. But the search is not just about collecting ideas. It's about feeling the truth of those ideas deep within the body and heart. It's about resonance. Some teachings may feel hollow or dissonant, while others strike a powerful, undeniable chord. And slowly a new inner compass begins to form, one that guides not from fear or conformity, but from truth. As this sacred search continues, something incredible starts to happen. The authentic self begins to emerge. In the next phase of spiritual awakening, the individual sheds what no longer feels real. The masks fall away. Pretending becomes exhausting and in many cases impossible. The facade, the carefully curated identity once used to survive in the world, begins to crumble. And underneath it all, something raw and true begins to shine. This is the stage of the emergence of the authentic self. It's a homecoming, a gentle but firm return to the version of you that existed before the world told you who to be. You may recall moments from childhood when you expressed joy freely, when you danced without shame, when you cried without guilt. That purity, that clarity begins to surface again. But this emergence isn't always graceful. It can come with resistance. The expectations of society don't just disappear. People around you might still expect you to play roles you've outgrown. Old jobs, outdated relationships, even your surroundings may begin to feel unbearably out of sync with who you are becoming. At this point, discomfort becomes a teacher. The more you try to fit into boxes that no longer hold your truth, the more your inner being rebels. You begin to say no to things you once said yes to. You speak up where you used to stay silent. You value peace over approval. You stop dimming your light to keep others comfortable. This stage often leads to massive life changes. Careers may end abruptly. Long-standing relationships might dissolve. You might move to a new place or radically shift your lifestyle. But all of it points to one thing: alignment. Life begins to rearrange itself to reflect who you truly are, no longer the person shaped by expectations, but the soul speaking through the human form. Internally, this stage is just as powerful. Old wounds rise to the surface. Traumas you thought you had buried resurface, not to punish, but to be released. Emotional purging becomes common. You might cry for no reason, experience waves of grief, or feel an overwhelming flood of emotions. But this is not regression. This is healing. And as the emotional debris clears, something else happens. Your body changes too. You may begin to experience what many refer to as ascension symptoms. These can include heightened intuition, vivid dreams, energy surges, sensations of heat or vibration in the body, and even strange physical symptoms that don't make sense to doctors. It's as if your entire system is recalibrating to a higher frequency. You're no longer who you were, and yet you're becoming who you were always meant to be. Finally, as the dust settles and the storms pass, the awakening journey arrives at its most peaceful destination, a life of alignment. In this culminating phase, every layer of your being, mind, body, and soul begins to harmonize. There is no longer a war between what you feel and what you do. You begin to live from your center, not from your conditioning. Living in alignment doesn't mean life becomes perfect, but it does become deeply meaningful. You begin to accept yourself, flaws, wounds, quirks, and all. There is compassion for your limitations and tenderness for your past. You become your own safe space, your own guide, your own healer. With this self-acceptance comes a profound shift in how you relate to others. You no longer judge as harshly. You begin to understand that everyone is on their own journey, doing the best they can from their level of awareness. Forgiveness flows more easily. Kindness becomes instinctive. This is also a time when the inner parent awakens. You begin to nurture yourself the way you always needed, offering patience, care, and encouragement to your inner child. You stop abandoning yourself for others, and in doing so, you teach others how to love you properly. But the alignment doesn't stop with yourself or your relationships. It expands outward into nature, into the universe. You begin to feel connected to the trees, the sky, the animals, the stars. Even the stillness of a rock or the whisper of wind seems to hold meaning. Interconnectedness becomes more than a concept, it becomes a lived experience. And perhaps most profoundly, you come to see that even darkness has its place. Pain is no longer the enemy. Shadow is not something to escape, but to integrate. You see beauty in the full spectrum of the human experience: light and dark, joy and sorrow, creation and destruction. All of it sacred. If this journey has touched you in any way, consider sharing it with someone who may be walking a similar path. And if you feel called, share your thoughts or your story in the comments below. Until next time, may you walk in truth, may you rest in clarity, and may your awakening unfold in perfect time.